I wrote in my book about going out that last Thanksgiving after George had been elected, but before he was inaugurated governor. And Daddy, we were all sitting in the den watching football on television over Thanksgiving, and Daddy said, "Who's that over there?" And I said, "That's my husband, Dad, that's George Bush." He said, "You married George Bush?" And I said, "Yes." And then he laughed and said, "I think I'll ask him for a loan."
Funny but sad too. Laura Bush reflecting on her father's experience with Alzheimer's. Harold Welch died in 1995 after battling the disease for 2 years. And more than half of all Americans now know someone with Alzheimer's. And this morning we begin a special ABC News series in collaboration with Maria Shriver and the Alzheimer's Association. Together they've produced the Shriver Report, A Woman's Nation Takes on Alzheimer's. It's the first to make a compelling connection between Alzheimer's and women. And in a moment, we'll talk with Maria. But first, how the disease is impacting ordinary American families. Every 70 seconds in the United States, someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And experts warn the country is ill-prepared for the growing epidemic.
With the coming of the baby boomers turning of age starting in 2011, almost 80 million of them, we will be seeing a tsunami of an increase in Alzheimer's disease.
And women are at the epicenter. They make up 2/3 of people who have Alzheimer's and of those who care for people with the disease.
A big part of this has to do with longevity. Women are still living longer than men.
Okay, gotta run.
Karen Pogs understood her 80-year-old mother losing her memory, but her world came to a screeching halt when her 56-year-old husband Jerry was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's.
I could see myself sitting there. I thought to myself, should I be putting my arm around my husband? Am I hearing this right? I mean, you would just absolutely stops you cold.
With his lifelong passion for woodwork and building, Jerry was at the top of his career as a successful construction executive, only to be laid off when his memory began to fail.
You know, I looked at the doctor and I said, I had rheumatic fever when I was a little kid and I beat that. And I said, I'll beat this one too. Gotta take a break. And he said, you really won't. So,
with 2 of their 4 children still at home, they were forced to downsize, and Karen went back to work as a teacher after a 20-year absence.
He was my rock. He was the breadwinner, and I'm having to take on some of that. I miss the Jerry and Karen of before.
All I hope is that every year that I have, that I can be as productive as I can be, and I want to enjoy life. I spend a lot of time focusing on the family and friends and doing the things I want to do.
The debilitating disease affects the patient and the caregiver, who's more likely to become depressed, have an increase in heart disease, and 6 times more susceptible to dementia. These women caregivers suffer at work too. Many are forced to go part-time or quit altogether. Karen says as Jerry's condition worsens, she'll have to cut back her hours, and she's not sure how she'll afford the medical bills. According to the Shriver Report, the United States will spend an astounding $20 trillion over the next 40 years treating Alzheimer's. Current treatments only slow the symptoms of patients like Jerry, who's in a clinical trial, but he and Karen both hope the government will provide more resources for families and more funding to find a cure. But for now, they say, they enjoy living in the moment.
It's very hard to see your loved one that you want to spend forever with, losing parts of things and seeing how frustrated and hurt they feel when they know they can't do something. Jerry and I decided that we're going to make the best of this, and he has a fabulous attitude.
When I got over grieving, I thought, this gives me a great opportunity. It gives me time to do the things I want to do. I think for us to be upbeat, raises our family and our friends up too.
And joining me now, Maria Shriver, the First Lady of California. She's the founder of Women's Nation, which, with the Alzheimer's Association, produced the report. Also, Anne O'Leary, Executive Director of the Berkeley Center on Health, Economic and Family Security at UC Berkeley, and an expert on women and work. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
So, as always with these cases, it's usually a personal experience that turns you into an activist.
Exactly.
Your father has the disease.
My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2003, and at that time there was very little information about the disease, and there was a big stigma about it. So, like millions of families, we had to start talking to people, asking questions, finding out what trials were going on, what medicine to do, who would do the caregiving, and we started down a very long road that continues to this day. So it turned me first to an author, and then to a producer, and today to an activist, to try to find a cure, bring attention to this disease, and reduce some of the stigma and make it in the mainstream.
So along with the doctors and along with you, Anne, there are proposals that you're trying to figure out. It's you just said that it's like the silent killer. People don't really want to talk about it.
Well, what we want to say is also that this affects, as you said in that report, 60% of the people who get it are women. They're also doing the caretaking, and millions of these women are also working full time. And in the polling, we report that they often say we had to go in to work late, we had to change our job to part-time, as that woman was talking, or leave our job altogether. And the workplace and the government have not kept up with this change that's going on all across the country.
Yeah, this is it's a tremendous burden on families. We estimate that families are spending $56,000 a year. They're paying out of pocket. We don't have any insurance for this. One of the great things about the health reform bill is there's going to be long-term insurance now that's going to be provided to people through their employers, but there's so much more we can do to relieve that financial burden.
Well, what specifically can be done to help people in the workplace, for instance, who need to take time to look after their family members?
Well, it's interesting, you look at the difference between men and women who are having this problem in the workplace. More often, men are saying that they are able to take the flexibility. Women often drop out of the workplace because they don't have policies in place to provide flexibility. They don't have policies in place that says that they can take the leave and they'll get some pay when they take the leave. We have no insurance, no paid family leave, no right to request flexibility in our country. These are things that we need to have a conversation about and really start working on.
But I think today employers could go and talk to their employees and say, do you need flexible hours? And this is particularly important to women who are in low-paying jobs and don't have the power. There's a lot of fear in the workplace today to even go and ask. Many of the people we polled said that they felt more comfortable asking for help with childcare than with elder care, that it's not something that employers are comfortable talking about. They don't really even know how to address it.
Yeah.
And isn't the Child Care Act is potentially, you're saying there should be some elder care legislated as well?
Yeah, to amend the child care tax aid so that perhaps it include elder care and pre-tax dollars. There's a lot of things that need to be amended. The Family Leave Act needs to also be able to include grandparents, spouses, in-laws that it doesn't cover today.
And do you think Congress, the administration, all those who have to get together to make this a reality can do that anytime soon?
I mean, I think that they're starting the conversation. They're starting to talk about workplace flexibility, but it has to be everybody having this conversation and realizing this is just such a tremendous burden. If we ignore it, the burden is on families. It's on families who don't have any insurance. They don't have any ability to pay for these costs. So we have to step up.
But it's also, the startling figure is that it could bankrupt the country. It's $20 trillion, you assess, over the next 40 years could be paid treating this
That's
disease.
right, and I think that this president could stand up and say that he understands that this is a national epidemic. This Congress right now could go ahead and pass the National Alzheimer's Project Act. They could do that today, which actually would put an office in HHS and say this is going to be a priority. We need coordination. We need a strategy. Families need to know that this Congress that's sitting right behind you is aware of this epidemic, that it's affecting working men and women. 2 million kids under the age of 18 are caring for loved ones at home struggling with Alzheimer's. This is already happening. The only people who are not talking about it sit in that building.
Right.
Well, you must have been talking to them. You must have been trying to figure out whether there is an appetite to do that. Apparently, the United States is the only developed country without a national strategy on this issue.
And that's exactly right. We need a national strategy. There is real hope that Congress will pass the National Alzheimer's Project Act. We really, that needs to happen. But there needs to be so much more than that. There was a really positive step in this health reform bill. But we need to do much more. I mean, the UK, for example, allows this right to request flexibility. You know, one of the women in this report said, I'm scared I'm going to get fired. I'm holding on just to be able to do this. I want to be able to ask for some flexibility, but I'm too scared to do that. We need that in our country.
I think what's also really exciting about this is that men and women can get together on this issue. Women always talked about getting maternity leave, but everybody has a parent. And I have found just in the time when my father was diagnosed to today, so many more people come up and talk to me about it. They don't whisper as much about it as they used to. And you see millions of men now stepping up to care for their mothers or their wives, and there are beautiful essays in this report, which we did with the Alzheimer's Association, where men talk about caring for their mothers and it being the most extraordinary thing they've ever done in their lives.
Terry Moran talking about his case with his mother, and your own brothers are caring principally for your father.
I have 4 brothers, and I write about them. They have, I think, giving their children a whole new role model, which is the strong, nurturing man. They take care of my dad, and they're there 24/7.
So let's get down to the real issue. One of the real issues is funding, resourcing, political galvanizing. But we were talking, I mean, your own husband, governor of California, has had to cut back some of these programs because of budget cuts. Alzheimer's is, by a huge factor, less resourced, less funding than cancer and other such diseases.
Yes, and in the Time magazine, which has Alzheimer's on the cover, one of the doctors says that, you know, heart disease and cancer gets $6 billion, $5 billion, and Alzheimer's gets $500 million. And in fact, it's going to be Alzheimer's in the next several years that's going to get those people way before cancer or heart disease. So obviously we need to increase funding, but, you know, in this climate, that'll probably be difficult. There's a Breakthrough Act that asks for $2 billion for research. But I think once again, this president could say, I want to launch, just like Kennedy launched expedition to the moon, he can launch an expedition to the brain. There are so many secrets in the brain that can uncover the cures for Alzheimer's, Huntington, Parkinson's, intellectual disabilities, how we learn, how we love, how we remember. All of this is in the brain, and why not have something like that in this country to galvanize people around?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's happening is we're making these very short-term decisions about how we fund things. So we're cutting paid caregivers in many of our states because of these budget crises. But look at what's going to happen on the back end. If we don't have somebody providing paid care or providing unpaid care because they can't take the time off from work, many people will end up being institutionalized. That is much more expensive. And we really need to think about those long-term
And what
costs.
many people ask is there a cure, or is there anything like a cure or something on the horizon?
Well, I think there's not a cure, but there's a lot of hope in terms of the research that's going on. You know, Time magazine has done this terrific issue today talking about the research and what's happening. There's a lot we've learned. There's a lot of hope, and I think Terry Moran's right. We have to have that hope, but we have to invest in the research. There's so little money invested in the research.
And one of the great things to get us hope will be more people who volunteer for trials. There are lots of trials going on, but anybody can volunteer for a trial. And the thing that we've learned in the last kind of 6 months is that Alzheimer's develops 15, 20 years before diagnosis. So people need to be aware of what's going on with their parents, with themselves, and get in early. That's where the hope is.
Now, your husband's term is coming up. You will not be in the California governor's mansion.
There isn't a governor's mansion. Headline, no mansion.
What will you be doing? Will you continue to lobby publicly for these kinds of things even after you're First Lady?
Well, I'll work on Alzheimer's because I'm passionate about it. And we have 78 million baby boomers who are entering their 60s and entering this prime time. So I think it should be not just me, but everybody should be concerned about this. But as to what I'm going to do next, I don't know.
And everybody wants to know what Governor Schwarzenegger is going to do next.
I didn't know that he was going to run, so I don't know what he's going to do now.
Yeah, but you also connected to the women's issues, the issues from last year, which is so critical.
Thank you both, Maria, and thank you so much for being here to discuss this. And you can find out more about Women's Nation, Alzheimer's, and this groundbreaking report on our website at abcnews.com/thisweek.